Welcome back to isotalk.net podcast for agents that are selling merchant services. Today, I want to touch on a pretty big topic, and so it's going to be a conversation. And the topic is the loyalty programs. If I visit today most of your old websites for agents or ISOs, I find that when you speak of loyalty programs, most of the times you actually mean gift card, credit cards, gift cards. And I kind of understand the origins of where it's coming from. And in fact, I will touch upon that as well. But most of the time, loyalty is not so much the gift cards, although I can see how that can be interpreted as a loyalty program. Most of the time, the loyalty program implies that during checkout, you identify the customer that is about to transact. So in a normal environment, let's go like pre-POS times. If we're just talking cash register, there's no way to know who the customer is unless you start making notes in a little notepad, and most retailers will not do that, right? So today, when we're talking about checkout with computers, it's just a matter of identifying the customer. The computer can keep track of it, and there's plenty of technologies out there to handle that. The question is, do you identify the customer during checkout or do you not? And this podcast is going to touch upon the analysis of where these kind of programs are coming from, who's mandating them, who's coming up with them, how do they benefit this industry, and what is the current state of affairs with the loyalty programs? How are different strategies are implemented by different retailers? First, though, let's take a look at the retail landscape, right? And so if you, in fact, let me show you. So if we're talking about the United States, there's about 1 million retail stores in the United States. And you can break them down into three piles, right? So we can call them national operators. And by national operators, right, so we'll talk about Walmart, Amazon, Kroger. These are the big national operators that have presence in nearly all the states and also are international in some cases. And I did some analysis, and looks like top 100 retailers in the United States own about 65,000 physical locations. All right, and so they have a strategy. They basically dictate the strategy, and I'll show you that later down the slides. Medium retailers are the regional players. The Piggly Wigglies are smaller operators that might exist in some, like Northwest or North or East-West or Southeast, whatever part of the United States, and not really penetrate nationally. So those will be considered regional medium retailers. And just to give you an example, that 50 companies will own about 10,000 stores. And, we're talking about 1 million retail stores in the United States. So we can assume that, let's push that number higher up, from 65,000, let's give the top 100, let's give all the big national operators, 150,000 stores across the United States. And let's give the 50,000 stores to the medium retailers that are, I think that's a fairly good and fairly conservative estimate, right? And so from that analysis, we are left with 800,000 locations that are represented by the small operators. And the small operator is a single store operator, right? 90% of them are going to be single store operators. Sometimes they'll go up to 2 or 3 or 5 stores. But that's the landscape. That's who we're talking about here. And I'm not really sure who's listening, but I would imagine that most of the agents that are listening are probably, focused in on the small retailers and maybe some medium retailers, right? But not national operators. But if I'm wrong, please let me know. It'd be an honor that I'm actually talking to you about anything. Cool. So now let me show you, where the loyalty programs is coming from. And obviously, you'll remember the time where, you know, the Krogers and the Safeways came up with their loyalty club cards. And it felt like they were being forced. And in fact, they kind of were being forced, because they took half of their store inventory and reduced it in price and said that you have to be a club member to have this price, or just, you know, pay regular price. And it continued to be to this day. And yet today, you know, you'll see 3 price points in Kroger, for example. First price point would be the regular price, the club price, and the third would be the price if you get our app, right? So we can have direct access to you, the consumer, the John and Jane. And that's what I would call the digital trade program, is when the national operator or international operator has direct access to individual consumer, even outside of the store premise. And so it's just happening in 2020 when this digital trade has began some food kind of, you know, started working, and you'll notice these programs more and more. And if history is of any indication, it is, I'm assuming that maybe 10 years from now or a little bit sooner, we'll start seeing regional operators and small retailers also dabbling with the digital trade. But that's what we mean by digital trade, right? Is the direct access to consumer via the app or some sort of an account that they have with you. I want to say that there is this gap, right? So when in late 90s or early 2000s, national operators began doing the club cards, it was controversial, it was weird, and it took some time to educate the marketplace to do this. And today you'll find a number of regional operators that are still not participating in this model. But that's okay, right? So they're kind of adopting it, and eventually they will adopt it, and eventually they'll have to start looking at the digital date programs or just become extinct. Really, those are the options. And then you get the small retailers, right? So the small retailers are a pretty big chunk, and they don't drive any of these initiatives, really. They kind of are being forced into it when it becomes mainstream, right? And so loyalty, almost 20 plus years now from now, since then, is pretty much mainstream. It's expected. Consumers are trained and expect to give their phone number or piece of their information, let's say, rather, and get some sort of a reward for that. That is very much mainstream. And so now you'll find that small retailers are being sort of, you know, being expected to offer loyalty programs. And this will come from smaller manufacturers and vendors of product sets. Cokes, you know, Lay's, maybe some alcohol providers or such. In this landscape, I want to show you a couple of examples of how these programs work during checkout, like in real life. And so the first example I chose is Marshalls. So Marshalls is definitely a national operator, and the loyalty that Marshalls has is integrated straight to their credit card offer that they have for their consumers. So they have a private label credit card that is being financed most likely by Capital One. Just guessing, it could be another provider. But they will distribute and set those accounts up at their stores. And first, you get offered an instant reward for getting their credit card, right? And that credit card is de facto their loyalty program, because that is how they get exposure to what you're spending in the store. And so they'll offer you the discount during checkout if you don't yet have this credit card. That's higher. So they'll give you, we'll give you 10% today, and then you'll continue to get 5% every time you use this card with us, right? So these programs have been around for a while, and they're not as popular as they used to be because it just doesn't seem generous enough, right? But honestly, that's going to be the consensus. I've checked with the younger generation. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to let my mom get the credit card. because I don't want to give up. I don't want to get another credit card for 10% or for 5%, because that 10% is just that one time during this checkout. And really, what do you buy at Marshall's that is that significant that you can't handle it if you don't give them the 10%? But nonetheless, check out this right here is an example of how that checkout experience works, and the level of enthusiasm that you get from the checkout clerk when she offers that offer to me. But they do offer it. You do have to say that they offer it every time. And if you don't believe me, go to any Marshalls and you'll see you will get that offer. Another example of these kind of stores would be Macy's, Nordstrom's. These are all national operators that offer credit cards. I believe Walmart has it too, right? So let's check it out.
Hello.
Are you putting this on your Marshall's card today?
I'm sorry?
Marshall's card?
No, I don't have one.
You want to apply for one today?
No.
Marshall's credit card?
It's okay.
Welcome back. And so you saw how this only took maybe, just a couple of seconds. And because it's tied to payment type, I think it was easy to train the staff to always ask for credit card. Funny, but years later, right, Square took this model and made it literally global. And I'm going to touch upon that later down this podcast, but let's keep that in mind that this credit card tied to the loyalty transactions has existed for a while. The times of JCPenney's, the times of Sears and Kmart's, they've had it. They've had all of this. There was a Sears credit card. There was, what do we want to call it? The Circuit City credit card. And, soon to be extinct Bed Bath & Beyond also had a credit card. So that was tied to loyalty. Now, let me demonstrate national retailers. Still, we're on the national retailers. This right here is the club sort of a scenario that we're talking about. And, for the membership, they would distribute these little tags that go on the keychains. They'll distribute the cards that go in the wallet, or they'll let you associate a phone number with your account so that you could just enter a phone number straight at the payment terminal. And this right here is a little bit less friction-y approach that's easier to adopt. And so what they'll do is, because we're talking big national grocers or just bigger stores, and in your neighborhood, these stores are anchor stores. Anchor store is where majority of the population goes there for one reason or another, and then the rest of the items are bought in some of the smaller stores, right? But everybody will go to Walmart, everybody will go to Kroger, everybody will go to Ralph's, Vons, Albertsons. You get the picture here, right? Or everybody will get their gas at Chevron. So those are anchor places. They'll bring majority of the consumers, and handling a phone number during checkout is something that everybody would be willing to give up, because half the store is priced lower if you just give them your phone number, or get a club card, or just get a card that you put in your wallet, or put a keychain that has a barcode on it. So let me demonstrate this with Publix.
Hi. Okay.
All right, so that was my experience in Publix, where I've entered a phone number and the price for my oranges dropped when I checked out. And you saw that there were people that were helping me check out. And now let me show you a similar experience, again, with a national operator. This is CVS, and CVS has self-checkout kiosks. And this is also a trend that has begun, maybe in 2017, 2018, when larger retail operators began installing self-checkout lines. CVS is not an exception, and in their self-checkout lines, it is possible also to handle the check-in as a loyalty customer. And the loyalty program with the national operators is nationwide. In other words, I can check into CVS store in California, in Florida, New York, anywhere. Anywhere. I'm not really sure if there's CVS in New York, but anywhere where there is CVS, I can check in to their loyalty program with my phone number. And so this right here is the checkout experience with a self-checkout machine at CVS.
Yeah.
If you have your enter phone number, then
Please wait. System processing. Place your item in the bagging area.
you please select your payment method. Please wait. System processing. Swipe or insert card and follow instructions on PIN pad.
If you are finished scanning, please touch Finish and Pay.
All right, so this was the checkout experience at CVS. You saw even I, technical person, sometimes stumble with things, but I want to kind of conclude this particular episode with this overview of the national operators and say that definitely they lead the way in technology and fintech progression in the United States. They continue to stay relevant by innovating and creating new technologies that get adopted nationwide in their huge corporate footprint. And so in later episodes, I'm going to show you some of the options on the mid-tier and also smaller operators. I'm slowly getting to the slowly operators, so please stick with us, subscribe, and check out this podcast further, because I will get all the way to the smaller retailers and explain to you what are the options there. And I think in the later episodes, I want to touch upon the technologies, because here we're just picking apart the actual marketplace, but I also want to pick apart the technologies that are being utilized today for this particular use case, the loyalties. So stay tuned, and there will be coming more on this series at isotalk.net. Thank you.